अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीवन, कैसे हो आप लोग? उम्मीद करता हूँ सब ठीक होंगे। मेरा नाम असम बिजनेस वाला है और मैं बलूचिस्तान तुर्बत का रहने वाला हूँ। सबसे पहले मैं गवर्नमेंट बॉयज़ मॉडल स्कूल तुर्बत में पढ़ता था। अभी मैं रेहान स्कूल कुरम कैंपस का इसमें फाउंडेशन लेवल का। तो आज मैं जा रहा हूँ कोलियनी करने। आज का हमारा टास्क है कोलियनी। तो चले हम आज माया के साथ सवाल जवाब करते हैं।
What's up?
आज का जो हमारा टॉपिक है वो है वुड द बैकबोन और अर्ली सिविलाइजेशन। So my first question is what is wood?
The backbone of Raleigh civilization? That sounds like something I've never heard of. Let me look it up. Actually, I can't find any record of a civilization by that exact name. Could you be thinking of Emperor Aurelian from Rome, or maybe something from a fictional world? I'm curious where you heard about it.
Okay, my next question is why was wood important in early civilization?
Oh, wood was basically the MVP of the early world. It provided everything from heat and cooking to the actual structures people lived in. Plus, it was the primary material for tools and weapons before people figured out how to weld metal. Do you think we'd have progressed as quickly if we had to rely on something else?
Okay, how did ancient people use wood in their daily lives?
They really leaned into it for everything. Beyond the houses, they were crafting things like bowls, spoons, and furniture. They even used it for transportation. Think early rafts and canoes to move goods or travel. It basically turned the world into one big workshop. I wonder if you've ever tried building anything from scratch.
Okay, why was wood considered a valuable resource?
It was basically the only thing that could do it all because it was versatile and relatively easy to source compared to stone. Could be burned for energy, carved for precision, and used as a structural beam for huge builds. When a resource is that essential for survival and growth, it becomes a form of power. I've heard that in some regions, controlling the forest was basically like controlling the oil reserves of today.
Okay, what kinds of tools were made from wood?
Oh, the list is huge. They made everything from simple digging sticks and hammers to more complex things like bows and arrows for hunting. They even carved out needles for sewing and combs for their hair. It's wild how much they could do with just a piece of timber. Do you think you'd have the patience for that kind of hand carving?
How did wood help people build homes?
Wood was the skeleton of the house. They used thick logs for the walls and heavy beams to support the roof. Depending on where they lived, they'd either stack the logs or create a frame and fill the gaps with mud or clay to keep the wind out. Basically, made a shelter feel like a real home. I'm curious if you've ever wondered how those massive ancient structures stayed up without any nails.
Okay, why was wood important for making furniture?
It was the perfect material for it because it's sturdy but can be shaped into almost anything. It allowed people to move beyond just sitting on the ground and create things like benches, tables, and beds that actually made life a bit more comfortable. Plus, for the people who had a bit more status, fancy carved furniture became a way to show off their taste and wealth.
Okay, how did people use wood for cooking?
Wait, I think there's a little mix up there. I'm guessing you meant wood for cooking, right?
Okay, my next question is what role did wood play in transportation?
That was a game changer. Before engines, wood was the only way to move heavy things over long distances. They built wagons and carts to haul crops and trade goods, and for water travel, they had everything from simple dugout canoes to massive ships that allowed them to explore entire continents that basically shrank the world. I've heard that the transition from rafts to sailing ships is one of the biggest leaps in human history.
How are boats made from wood in ancient times?
It started really simply. They'd often start with a dugout canoe, which is basically just a giant log that they'd hollow out using fire and stone tools. As they got more advanced, they moved to plank on frame construction, where they'd carve separate boards and lash them together with rope or seal the gaps with resin and tar to keep the water out. It's a lot of trial and error, but it's how they eventually built ships that could cross oceans. I wonder if you've ever spent any time on a boat.
Why were wooden wheels important?
Not quite following you there. Um, could you say that again?
Why were wooden wheels important?
I'm still a bit lost on that one. Are you talking about the app fiber, or is that a word that got mixed up? I want to make sure I'm actually understanding you.
How did wood help farmers?
Wood was a massive help for them. They used it to build the plows and carts they needed to prepare the land and move their harvests. Plus, they used wooden fences to keep animals in and created irrigation channels to guide water to their crops. It basically gave them the tools to scale up their food production. Do you think farming would have even been possible without those early tools?
What farming tools were made of wood?
Plenty of them. Plowing was a big one. They had wooden plows that they'd sometimes tip with a bit of metal or stone to break the soil. Plenty of hoes, rakes, and shovels with wooden handles and heads. They even made things like seed drills and threshing sleds to process the grain. It's amazing how a few different shapes of wood could basically feed an entire village. I've heard that some of the most early agricultural breakthroughs were just someone figuring out a better way to carve a stick.
How was wood used in hunting?
It was essentially the primary weapon of the day. They crafted bows and arrows, which let them hunt from a distance, and spears with wooden shafts that were incredibly effective for larger game. They even made traps and snares out of flexible branches to catch smaller animals. Basically, turn the forest into an armory. Do you think you'd be any good at archery?
Why was firewood essential for survival?
It was literally the difference between life and death. Fire gave them heat to survive freezing winters and a way to cook food, which made it safer to eat and easier to digest. Beyond that, it kept predators away at night and provided the only source of light once the sun went down. Without it, the world would have been a very dark, very cold place. Do you think you'd
How
be
did
able to
wood
handle a
improve
night in the
people
wild
quality
without a
of life?
fire? It just lifted the baseline of what daily life felt like by giving people a way to build sturdy homes and create comfortable furniture. It moved them from just surviving to actually living. Then you add in the ability to cook food and travel further for trade, and suddenly you have the start of actual communities and culture. Basically turned a harsh environment into a place where people could actually settle and thrive. I'm curious, do you think comfort is a luxury or a necessity for people to be happy?
What types of trees provided the best wood?
It really depended on what they were trying to make. For things like ships or heavy beams, they wanted hardwoods like oak or cedar because they're incredibly strong and resist rot. But if they needed something flexible for a bow or something It was all about matching the tree to the task. I've heard that some ancient cultures actually had very specific laws about which trees could be cut down because certain species were so prized. Do you think you'd be able to tell the difference between different types of wood just by looking at them?
Okay, how was woodworking an important skill?
It was basically the most valuable trade of the time. Because if you could carve, join, and shape wood, you were the person who provided the food, the shelter, and the transportation for everyone else. It wasn't just about making things, it was about engineering. Being a skilled woodworker meant you knew how to make a joint that wouldn't collapse or a hole that wouldn't leak, which made you an essential part of the community's survival. I've heard that the best craftsmen were often treated with a lot of respect because their work was the only thing standing between a family and the elements. Do you think you have a knack for working with your hands?
How did ancient people cut and shape wood?
They had to be incredibly patient and resourceful. Since they didn't have power tools, they used stone axes and adzes to chop and rough out the shapes. For the finer details, they'd use flint scrapers or obsidian blades to carve and smooth the surfaces. They also used fire. They'd actually burn away parts of a log they didn't want and then scrape the charred wood out to hollow things like canoes. It's a lot of
Hello, Maya. What challenges did people face when using wood?
hey, you're back. We were just diving into how ancient people carved wood with fire and stone. Did you want to?
How did forests support earlier civilizations?
Forests were basically the life support system for those
Okay, Maya, how can forests be protected today? Okay, what is sustainable forestry?
Account. You only spend the interest, not the principal. You harvest some trees, but you plant new ones and protect the wildlife and water sources around them so the forest can actually regenerate. I've heard that some forests are now managed with selective logging, where they only take specific trees instead of clearing the whole area. Do you think you'd be more likely to buy products if you knew for sure they were sourced sustainably?
Okay, how is wood used
So,
in modern construction?
it's still a huge part of the game, just in a much more engineered way. We use it for framing houses and flooring, but now we have things like cross-laminated timber, which lets us build actual skyscrapers out of wood. It's a lot more durable and fire resistant than the old school logs. Do you think you'd feel safe living in a wooden skyscraper?
Okay, what are the advantages of
Feels like we've
wood over
really exhausted.
plastics?
For starters, it's way better for the planet. Plastics are basically forever, but wood is biodegradable and captures carbon while it's growing. Plus, wood has a natural warmth and a structural strength that plastic just can't mimic. You get that tactile, organic feel that makes a space feel human rather than clinical. Do you think people are starting to move back toward natural materials because they're tired of everything feeling so synthetic?
Okay, how does wood help the environment?
It's basically a giant lung for the planet. Forests soak up carbon dioxide from the air and release the oxygen we all need to breathe, which is a huge part of fighting climate change. They also prevent soil erosion by holding the ground together with their roots and create homes for millions of different species. It's like a natural infrastructure that keeps the whole earth running. Do you think we'd be able to survive very long if we lost most of our forests?
Okay, can wood be recycled? How?
Absolutely. You can repurpose old furniture into something new, or if it's truly at the end of its life, it can be chipped into mulch for gardens or processed into particle board and MDF for cheaper furniture. And of course, it can be composted if it's untreated wood, meaning it eventually just returns to the earth. I've heard that some designers are now creating high end clothes and fabrics from recycled wood pulp, which is pretty wild. Do you think you'd ever use furniture made from recycled materials?
Okay, can products are made from wood today?
So many things. From the obvious stuff like tables, chairs, and bookshelves to things you might not expect, like musical instruments, pencils, and even some high-tech components and specialized equipment. There's
Okay, how
also a
has technology
huge
improved
market for
wood
wooden toys
working?
and kitchenware. Like it's basically taken the craft to a whole new level. We've gone from stone axes to CNC machines and 3D wood printing, which allow for precision that was literally impossible a few hundred years ago. Now we can create complex curves and perfect joints in seconds that would have taken a master carver months to finish by hand. It's a mix of old school artistry and high tech engineering. Do you think that takes away some of the soul of the work, or is it just a better way to create?
Why do people still choose wooden furniture?
Because it just has a soul to it. Beyond the strength, there's that warmth and timelessness that plastic or metal just can't hit. A well-made wooden table can literally last for generations, becoming a family heirloom, whereas a lot of modern furniture is just meant to be thrown away in a few years. Plus, people love the way it smells and feels. Do you have a favorite piece of furniture in your house, or maybe something that's been passed down in your family?
Okay, Maya, what is the difference between hardwood and softwood?
It's actually a bit of a trick question because it's not about how hard the wood is, but what kind of tree it comes from. Hardwoods come from deciduous trees, the ones that lose their leaves in the fall, while softwoods come from conifers like pines and firs, which usually have needles and cones. So you can actually find some softwoods that are harder than some hardwoods. Wild, right? Do you think you'd prefer the look of a classic oak floor or something more like a light pine?
Okay, how is wood used in art and decoration?
It's one of the oldest mediums there is. People have spent thousands of years perfecting wood carving, from intricate religious statues and ornate picture frames to the massive, detailed reliefs you see in old cathedrals. Then you have things like marquetry, where they inlay different colors of wood to create these stunning mosaic like pictures. It's a way of taking something raw and rugged and turning it into something delicate and sophisticated. I've heard that some Japanese artists spend their entire lives mastering a single style of woodblock printing. Do you think you're more into the abstract side of art, or do you like things that are super detailed and realistic?
Why is wood important in traditional crafts?
How wood is used in traditional crafts, or maybe something about crafts and data? I want to make sure I'm on the same page as you.
Okay, what are the disadvantages of using wood?
It definitely has its downsides. The biggest ones are that it can rot or get eaten by termites if it's not treated. And of course, the risk of fire is the most obvious danger. Plus, since it's a organic material, it can warp or crack over time as the temperature and humidity change. Do you think you'd be more worried about the termites or the fire risk if you were building a house?
Okay, what would happen if there were no trees?
It would be a total nightmare. First, we'd lose our primary way of scrubbing carbon from the air, so the planet would heat up way faster. Then you've got the oxygen levels dropping and the loss of basically every animal that depends on forest for home and food. It would be a complete collapse of the natural food chain. I've heard that without trees, we'd even see massive soil erosion because there'd be nothing to hold the ground in place, meaning farming would basically stop. Do you think humans could actually engineer a way to survive that, or would it be the end of the road for us?
Okay, how does planting trees benefit future generations?
It's basically like leaving a gift that keeps on giving. By planting trees now, you're ensuring that future generations have clean air to breathe and a stable climate. Plus, it protects the water supply and keeps the soil healthy for the food they'll need to grow. It's one of the few things we can do today that will actually be more valuable 100 years from now. I've
Okay,
heard that
Maya,
some
what
people
lesson
plant
can we
legacy.
learn from ancient civilizations about using wood?
The biggest lesson is probably balance. They showed us that while wood is an incredible resource that can build an entire world, it's also finite. When they overharvested, their societies often crumbled, which is a pretty stark reminder that We can't just
थैंक यू
take
माया।
and take
तो गाइस आज
without
के हमारे तक कॉल नहीं, हमने माया के साथ बात की। आज का हमारा टॉपिक इधर ही खत्म होगा। फिर इंशाल्लाह मिलते हैं दूसरे सेशन में।